Welcome to St Martin the Fields, and welcome to Great Sacred Music. Our emphasis today is on the joy of Christmas. Howard Thurman, the great African-American theologian, possibly the greatest influence on Martin Luther King, says at the beginning of his book, Jesus and the Disinherited, which I warmly commend to you as a wonderful book, written in 1949, but just as relevant today, that the Bible was written for those with their backs to the wall. And several of the pieces we're going to sing and listen to today fall into that category, particularly as spirituals from the African American tradition reflect the experience of slavery and identify with the Christmas story, because it's a story about people with their backs to the wall, about displaced people through the census, about people giving birth more or less outside in the stable, about people who quickly become refugees in being turfed out to Egypt by Herod's persecution, and so on. Slaves conflated Abraham in the Bible with Father Abraham Lincoln, who was going to free them, and associated Harriet Tubman with Moses and the Ohio River with the Jordan River. So many of the lines in the spirituals have very contemporary significance. And I think to understand the spirituals, you need to understand that what in the Bible is presented as a historic story is presented within these spirituals as a story that's taking place now in the lives of the people singing them. We're actually going to sing together now. It's our tradition at Great Sacred Music to sing together at the beginning and the end. So we're going to sing Joy to the World, which, as you'll notice, isn't a spiritual, but is interesting in the respect that it was written by Isaac Watts, the great nonconformist hymn writer, father of English hymnody, as he's sometimes called. And actually, if you look at the words and you think about the words while you're singing them, this is America's favourite carol. This always comes out number one in America's list of best known and best loved carols, but there's actually very little content from the Gospels in this carol. And that's because Isaac Watts believed that the template for hymns was really the Psalms. So you've got a lot of references to Psalm 98 and Psalm 96 in this carol, but there's no donkey and there's no dusty road and there's no shepherds and there's no animals around. There's none of the usual stuff of Christmas carols in this at all. It reads much more like a psalm than it does like your conventional Christmas carol. And if you want to have a big fight about this carol, then you turn to your neighbour and say, I believe Handel wrote the tune to this, and your neighbour says, that is actually not true. And you say, oh, actually, people do say that Handel did write that, but don't do that. Remain seated and sing it sitting down, as I will, and the voices will stand and lead us as we sing Joy to the World.
Let
Well, we're now going to hear two contrasting pieces which genuinely are African American spirituals. First of all, Go Tell It on the Mountain, compiled by John Wesley Work Jr., dating back to at least 1865. So it's thought to come probably just before the Civil War. It's not one of the ancient ones, but it's certainly a 19th century genuine spiritual. It's associated with Christmas because so many of the words are about the Christmas story. But again, that notion of on the mountain goes back to those famous words of Isaiah, often read in Christmas carol services, how lovely on the mountains are the feet of the one that brings good news. So Go Tell on the Mountain is also, contrastingly, the title of a 1953 semi-autobiographical novel by James Baldwin, who, as you will know, was one of the great African-American civil rights leaders in the 60s, but was also gay. And the novel focuses on the role of the Pentecostal church in the lives of African-Americans as a negative source of repression and moral hypocrisy that James Baldwin brings out very strongly, and also as a positive source of inspiration and community. We're also then going to hear Mary Had a Baby, which is a different style, a call and response spiritual. Now, they say that this originated on the South Carolina coastal island of St. Helena and is actually an early 20th century piece, although nobody really knows. But it was collected by the Sierra Leonean scholar and researcher of West African music, Nicholas Balanta Taylor. And of course, the significance of this is the historical mystery about to what extent the roots of African American spirituals, including the Christmas ones, goes back to before the people who wrote them, their ancestors, before they were slaves, and goes back to the roots of African music before slaves were transported across the Atlantic Ocean, hence the interest of a Sierra Leonean scholar in this piece. Mary Had a Baby, and then first we have Go Tell It on the Mountain.
Jesus
Well, having heard two 19th century spirituals, we're now going to look at two pieces that aren't really spirituals in the conventional sense at all, in the sense that they're post-war compositions, and one of them is not an African-American composition at all. So we're going to start with Jesus, What a Wonderful Child. It's not clear who wrote this. Some say that Sister Margaret Allison of the Angelic Gospel Singers, a 1950s performing group, wrote it. She did write a piece you probably know called Glory to the Newborn King, and many believe that that piece morphed over the years into this one, Jesus, What a Wonderful Child. But again, if you haven't satisfied yourself arguing with your neighbour about whether Handel wrote the tune to Joy to the World, you can get deep into that argument. What we do know is that Mariah Carey's 1994 Merry Christmas album made this song go viral, as I suppose we would say today, made this song popular. That's why it's so well known. And this is an adaptation we're going to hear from Rollo Dilworth, who's a contemporary composer based, in Temple University in Pennsylvania, trained at North Park Covenant University in Chicago. And if you know Moses Hogan, he's kind of picked up the baton from Moses Hogan, and very much in the same tradition since Moses Hogan's untimely death about 15 or 20 years ago. And then we're going to hear Mary's Boy Child, and this one isn't really an African-American spiritual at all, because it was written by Jester Hairston, who wrote a song for a birthday party with a calypso rhythm because the people at the party would be mainly West Indians. Sometime later, he was asked to write a new Christmas song and remembered the calypso rhythm from his old song and wrote new lyrics for it. But again, the crucial person in relation to making this song famous was Harry Belafonte, who heard the song and recorded it in 1956. It was the first single to sell over 1 million copies in the United Kingdom. Boney M, you may remember them. They couldn't be with us today, but the voices are a distinct improvement, and they made a version in 1978 that sold even more than 1 million copies. So two more contemporary pieces in the spiritual style of the Joy of Christmas. Well, it's time for us all to join in now again, and we're going to sing the Calypso Carol, which again isn't a spiritual, but it sounds like one. It was written by an Englishman, Michael Perry, while he was a student up the road at Oak Hill Theological College in 1964. He was only 22. But frustratingly for him, as later a prolific hymn writer, this remains his best known and most loved work. He originally wrote the song for a college carol concert, and it only became famous by accident. Cliff Richard, who you may not know, but is a minor pop singer in this country, was hastily assembling a selection for radio and included the song to replace a missing recording. It gained popularity and was included in none other than the 1969 songbook Youth Praise 2. And after you've been in Youth Praise 2, there is no looking back for you. So it's still regarded as a very contemporary piece, even though it was written almost 60 years ago. And as I say, it remains Michael Perry's best known and best loved contribution to the canon. We remain seated, and the voices will stand and lead us as we sing See Him Lying on a Bed of Straw. Well, we're coming to the end of Great Sacred Music for this week. I hope you've enjoyed yourself. If you have, there's opportunities to make a donation as you leave by almost any possible physical or technological means you could possibly dream of. Next Thursday, we are going to have 5 lessons of carols, and the Thursday after, we're going to have the Gate of the Year. So GSM continues unabated through the Christmas season, and the big breaking news about next week is it's going to be a whole lot warmer. You'll be pleased to know that. We've arranged that in your honour. We finish with a slightly different take on the Christmas story. You wouldn't have thought that was possible. You've probably been to 1 or 2 carol services already, and you wouldn't think there was such a thing as a different take on the Christmas story, but it turns out that there is. And the different take is that in this spiritual, we concentrate on the shepherds, and they leave their sheep, and the analogy is made with the first disciples, who then left their fishing nets and their tax gatherers' seats and other professions to follow Jesus. So there's a connection here to the rest of the gospel story that you don't get in very many of the carols. Possibly once in Royal David City makes that kind of connection, but it's a fairly unusual connection to make. It's only implied here, but it's very clearly here. Rise up, shepherd, and follow. Thanks for joining us.